Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar of today. So good morning, good afternoon, and good night, depending on the time zone where you are. So today's session will be about how can we build applications in Microsoft Azure using app services and serverless workloads. So talking a little bit about Wintellect's core services. So Wintellect is a consulting and training company. In consulting, we develop custom software applications and design and architect solutions for customers, and also train consulting company customers, and also especially in Microsoft, being the Microsoft #1 training vendor for over 15 years. And Wintellect has already trained more than 50,000 Microsoft developers, so that you have an idea of how kind of staff and trainers Wintellect has on his payroll. So as you can see, some of them already wrote more than 30 books. And if you consider that writing a book is, I think for me, is already a life goal achievement, writing 30 of them, so it's really a big achievement that you can have. And of course, this states a little bit of the quality of the persons that you have working here. So special offer for today's attendees of this webinar: you will get 10% discount on any public virtual Microsoft official curriculum course. So you just need to go to wintellect.com/mock. You also get 10% discount on Microsoft certification role training. So if you have any questions, please contact Marta. Marta, she'll be more than happy to answer everyone's calls and everyone email about this. So doing a little bit of presentation about myself. So my name is Tiago Costa. I work as a cloud architect and advisor. And basically this means that I go to companies and I design solutions for them. I help them migrate workloads that they currently have today to the cloud. And of course, we take advantage of those migration projects so that we can also improve a little bit the design. So we just give like a refresh on their design to have a more cloudy design for today's Microsoft Azure. I'm also a trainer, so I train people mainly on Azure, and I prep company staff so that they can build amazing tools and amazing solutions for their users. I'm also the author of some courses, and I'm also a speaker in some events, like for example Microsoft Ignite, like here today on this webinar series. I work as an independent contractor. I'm an MVP for Microsoft Azure, and I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer. You have all my contact information in this slide, so if you want to ping me after, so for example, after the webinar with questions, etc., be my guest, okay? Just ping me. I'll be more than happy to help everyone. So today's agenda. So we're going to talk a little bit about web application architecture overview. Then we're going to talk a little bit about platform as a service versus serverless and serverless. Then we're going to talk about services. So services today, I will cover app services, I will cover Azure CDN, traffic manager, and also Azure Functions, so that we can include something from the serverless world. Of course, look, we just have 1 hour, so I'm going to try to do my best to do all the demos and build an application from scratch, from zero to an application that is scalable, just using PaaS and serverless environments. So it will be challenging. So let's just start. So web application architecture overview. So I can start to develop basic web applications, and as you can see in here, so basically I have Azure Active Directory to work it out, all the authentication and authorization part. I will have a web app, okay? and that web app will work here on a service, okay, on a service plan. But I can have here then a database system, some storage blob. Okay, it works. Okay, but of course this design that you have over here is really, let's just say, a simple, a basic web application design. I can create this and transform this a little bit more scalable. And if I do this, I can end up with something like this. As you can see in here, so I have in here an Azure CDN, okay, to basically a content delivery network to shift and to serve some of the static content that we can have in your app. I still have my web app here inside an app service plan, but then I can have here a queue uh, that will basically, this web application, if it needs to have like small background tasks to do, it will just generate a queue. So the web app, the queue just responds to the web app. Yeah, I got your message in here. So the web app can respond to the user saying, okay, we're going to process your request. And then in the back, we can have a function app. Function apps can be totally serverless. So there is no compute here that we need to configure attached to this. So this part up to here is everything that we're going to configure today in today's webinar. Of course, look, I can still have some Redis cache. I can still have some Azure Search and also Cosmos DB from a NoSQL implementation point of view. But this is great, but this is a regional web application. If I want to have a global distributed web application, I need to kind of replicate. Okay, so this year, okay, the first square here on the top, it's basically what we had on the previous slide. But if I want, I need to have exactly the same thing, okay, or similar at least in another region. And in this example, I have an active region and I have a standby region, just in case of that, for example, the first region has a problem. Your solution needs to survive to this. And this is not is because it's Azure and it's the Microsoft Cloud or cloud in general that is all full of unicorns and rainbows. Stuff breaks. And we have a bunch of examples when that happened, not only on Azure, but also on other clouds like GCP, like AWS. And that happens. So we need to think about it if we have a solution that cannot be offline. So in these cases, okay, we can have a standby region, or we can even have something, even in my opinion, slightly even better, which is having two active regions, okay? And then depending on the location of the user will be redirected to one of the regions or to the other region. This is something that today we can have this, and we can have this running in just an hour, like we're going to see. This was something that a couple of years ago, without the cloud, this took months, okay, to set up something like this. So let's talk a little bit about what about cloud architecture, just a view, okay, from the field, what it is today, and what I want today to be my goals when I'm designing applications for my customers. One of the goals that I always have is less servers, more code. So with this, what I want to tell is I don't want to take care of the infrastructure. What I want to do is just to write code, just to write features, focus on my business. And I don't want to focus on managing an infrastructure. Managing an infrastructure sometimes is okay, it's a need that we have. We need to do it, but doesn't add any value to our business, zero value. What adds the value is the code that we're going to write, features that we're going to put in our products so that we can better serve our users. So this leads to a little bit of history, so a little bit of evolution from what we had. So when we talk about on-prem, back in the days, and even some companies, this is still the reality for some certain companies. And basically what we have is when I have on-prem, I have a bunch of questions. And you can say, oh, it's just a few of them, a few, okay. Okay, I just have some examples here. How can I scale my app? How can I monitor my servers? Which operating systems am I going to use? Am I going to use Windows, Linux for this? Okay. What about the physical access to my servers? How am I going to protect physical access to my servers? That costs money. Also, if there is a spike in the increase of the utilizations, how can I handle that? How can I scale? So all of these are valid questions that we have, okay, that we have in here. Of course, if we move from on-prem, okay, and we start to have an infrastructure as a service workload, we start to talk a little bit and, well, we make different questions, which is how often should I patch my servers, backups, which packages should be in my servers, also the size of the servers, how can I scale my applications, and of course, how can I deploy what operating systems, and how can I monitor my applications. So the questions here are slightly different. I no longer have questions like, hey, yeah, if I need to buy servers, there is a purchase order that I need to fulfill in here. There's a purchase department within my company that, well, it will need to follow a certain pattern that they already have in place, a certain process that ends. Physical access to servers, I don't need to secure them anymore because the vendor, in this case Microsoft, will do that. It's great, this, but I still have a lot of questions in here. If I go to from infrastructure as a service to PaaS, there are a lot of them, those questions that again disappear. But I still need to understand what are the size of my servers. And I'm going to do, for example, an app service. And we are going to see that. I'm going to need to select, okay, what is the size of the machine in the back, the instance in the back that will basically where we're going to run our workloads. How can I increase server utilization? How many servers am I going to need? How can I scale my apps? All of this, and we're going to configure all this, and you're going to see there are still questions. If I move to a pure serverless workloads, the big question is, how do I architect my app? What do I need to code in here? I will have, for example, let's just start talking about functions, okay? I'll have a function here, I'll have a logic app over there, I'll have an event grid in here, I'll have a storage account over there. But this is just the questions that I have. I don't talk about, hey, do I need how much RAM, how much CPU I need to run that function over there? We don't do those kinds of questions, okay, anymore. So basically, what is serverless? Is that totally abstraction of servers? Of course, when we say serverless, of course, we understand there are servers behind the scenes for sure. But what happens is that, well, there is a pure abstraction on all the servers. We don't care about that. And then we're going to have is an event-driven instance scale and also micro billing. So the micro billing component, it's awesome because look, I don't need to manage this in terms of instances. I'm going to manage is, okay, how many queries are we going to do? How many calls are you going to do to my function, for example? And in that case, I'm just going to pay for what I'm going to use. Pure. I don't need to have like, oh, I still have like 20 or 30% of an access there that it's always available in case of just someone request me more things. No, we don't have that anymore because we just pay for what we are going to use. For example, I had a small Azure function that was just running 4 or 5 times a month, and I was paying for an app service plan to run a web job with that. Well, when I migrated that to an Azure function, I put that in consumption mode. And to be totally honest, in my Azure bill, I don't even see it because basically it's still during the free tier of Azure Functions. It doesn't run that much, so I don't even pay. So I have an example here. Imagine that I'm generating a photo thumbnail. I have my server, I have my compute. Hey, I have 2 requests. Great, the server can handle that. That's not a problem. But if I have a bunch, okay, of requests getting there at the same time, well, that should be, okay, that should be a problem. And of course, look, we need to work it out, okay? We need to work it out, all those things, okay? But if we go serverless, what happens is that all of that, okay, is of course something like this happens in the back, but we don't care. We don't need to work it out. We don't need to work it out, all of this. So this is why serverless is so cool and why everyone is talking about it and everyone wants to use it. Okay, so talking now about Azure App Service. So let's start. Remember the diagram that we had in the beginning of the presentation, so the last one. I want to create a global scale application. So let's just start, okay, to talk about the first part will be the Azure App Service. So let's just start to talk about that and how can I build stuff with this. So Azure App Service, it's a scalable platform to host web applications, APIs, mobile apps. Currently supports Windows and Linux, so you can run your applications, and on the back, of course, there are virtual machines. We don't manage those virtual machines, but of course they exist. They can be Windows or Linux. They can run code, or you can even run containers over there. Of course, look, to be totally honest with you, if you want to run containers, hey, there's other stuff, okay? You have container instances, you have AKS, which is an awesome orchestration service to run containers, and you should work with those services. And of course, integration with development tools like Visual Studio, Eclipse, Azure DevOps, GitOps. There are integrations for the main development tools. And basically, it's totally open platform for many different development languages. So what I mean with this is not just a Microsoft thing. This works with all the technologies. So I have an ASP.NET web application, just run it here. I have a Python app, just run it here. Java, Go, PHP, you name it. You can just run it in here because the platform supports all of those. Service features that we have. So we have Azure Marketplace integration. So if you want to build like a WordPress website, the other day, for example, I just needed to build a WordPress website because I was hosting the global Azure bootcamp in my country. And basically I was like, hey, okay, let's just basically create, I just created a WordPress website. I basically created, just got a template, I put in a template, I added stuff. 2 hours later, I had my website up and running, okay? Really, really quickly. It's not the best website in the world, for sure it's not. But look, it just works. Azure Functions, web jobs, always on, so custom domains, SSL, so all of these are features that we have on this. Also auto-scaling, we're going to cover auto-scaling today. Also deployment slots, if you want to create like a development environment, you can create a slot, a development slot, and then you can, for example, swap from one to the other. And of course, easy integration with services like Azure CDN and Traffic Manager, and we're going to see those. We have a bunch of different tiers. I'm not going to cover in tiny detail the differences between the tiers, but the first two ones, the free and the shared, they use shared compute. So you might end up spending all your compute minutes a day, and then of course your app will not run anymore. If you want dedicated compute, you need to start in the basic, and then you can create instances, but you need to create only 3. You can only go to up to 3. Standard allows you to create deployment slots, have also the option to attach a traffic manager to this, and you can have auto scaling. So for me, to be totally honest, my recommendation, if you go for production workloads, you start on the standard, okay? And then look, I still have others, premium V2, and then I also have the isolated. The big feature difference between the isolated and the other ones is the VNet. So when I create this, I say, hey, that app service goes to that specific VNet over there. And then basically I can have this totally private. when the other ones, or they always have a public endpoint. So let's start the demo. Let's create an Azure App Service plan and a web app. So I have here my basically my Azure portal, and I have here a webinar demo resource group. And as you can see, this is totally empty. Okay, so this is going to be really getting from scratch. So app services, I go to app services. I'll just create here a new app service. Okay, I'm just going to say, yeah, webinar demo will be, okay, my it will be basically be my resource group where I want this. Webinar WE will be the name for my instance. Runtime stack, well, ASP.NET, why not? See, because I selected ASP.NET 4.7, it doesn't allow me to choose Linux as an operating system, which makes all the sense because you cannot run those apps in you cannot run those in Linux. Okay, if you wanted to run in Linux ASP, you need to go for ASP.NET Core. And then here on the plan, see, this will be a standard S1 plan. So I'm just going to accept here the defaults, but of course you could just go there, okay, you could change and you can check all the other tiers over there, etc. But again, we just have 1 hour, so I'm going to try to do all the demos in just 1 hour. So I'm not going to cover like pricing and stuff like that, okay? So I have a question here when this is creating what the Azure resource group means in Azure. So Azure resource groups, when I create a resource, that resource needs to be within a resource group. And then the resource groups exist so that later on, okay, I can do, for example, and using RBAC on that resource group. So I can have a person, that person will only have certain permissions within that resource group is a level, a scope that I can have to do, okay, to do permissions. Okay, so that's one option. Okay. So there you go. This is my solution. If I just click here, there you go. Okay, it's basically it is fully working. Okay, so for now it's done. So let's see go. Web application deployment. Of course, I can deploy to Azure Web App, and I can deploy applications in several different ways. I can do it through FTP, through web deploy, which is basically a protocol that I have to do this. I can use Visual Studio Code, PowerShell commandlets, or Bash, the Azure CLI. But to be totally honest, the way that you want to do this in the real world, in the wild, will have a continuous integration and a continuous deployment pipeline using, for example, Azure DevOps. I'm not saying that you need to use Azure DevOps. That will be my personal preference and my recommendation, but there are also amazing other tools out there, okay? As long as you use something to orchestrate your pipelines, that's awesome, okay? That's what I want to use all the time. So now let's create a web app on this, okay? And let's just see this working, okay? So I'm just going here, create a new project. This is visual, okay? This is basically Visual Studio. I'm just creating a web app. So web, ASP.NET, let me just do projects demo, and webinar demo, okay? So there you go. I'll just press OK. It's going to be an MVC app, okay, in here. So, and I'm not even going to change authentication or not. So I'm just going to press here, OK. There you go. So now I'm downloading all the packages. So this takes a while. Let me see. There you go. So now to deploy this, okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to deploy straight from Visual Studio. Like I said, yeah, better yet will be to deploy this from Azure DevOps, and I'm getting a request if I can use Visual Studio online integration. Okay, it's called Azure DevOps today. I will say that will be awesome, but today we just don't have the time to cover that. But I think I'm going to take a note on that. okay, and maybe we can do another webinar where we can cover a little bit the Azure DevOps component on, and how can we deploy apps through Azure DevOps and the infrastructures, etc. So I'm going to hit publish here. So right click on the webinar demo project, I click publish. Now we have this window here. This is just, okay, Azure App Services, that's exactly what I want. I clicked it, select existing, I'm going to click publish. When I do this, and look, because I already have my Visual Studio integrated, okay, with my Azure subscription, this shows up, okay, this is my subscription, yeah, and this is my resource group, and this here is my app. Great, that's exactly what I want. So you just press OK, and that's it. Okay, we just published a web application from Visual Studio, okay, to Azure, basically to our Azure App Services. So when this is doing, let me just come here, index, and let me just put like this webinar, Wintellect webinar, and now I'm going to say here Europe, because I'm deploying this, okay, to Europe. So if we cover this, so let me go. So there you go. This is already deployed. I'm just going to redeploy this so that I can update that. Okay, so let me just update this. There you go. So if we refresh this, okay, we should now see here, okay, instead of ASP.NET, Wintellect webinar, and then Europe. So let's just wait for this to finish. There you go. See, this is what we have now. Super easy, okay, to set up, super easy to configure. One of the other things that we have here is that it's also, if I want to configure like app settings, okay, I can. There is an option about app settings. I'm going to show you this, where I can create here, okay, for example, app settings and also connection strings. The values that you put in here through the Azure portal, they will override, okay, the ones that you put in on a web config. So on a web config, for example, you have an app setting for, let's imagine, a search radius that you have to search something, and you have like 20 miles there. And now someone says, hey, it cannot be 20 miles, we need to put 40 miles. Okay, you just need to come in here, okay, and just click here, okay, where it says new application setting, and basically add in here, okay, name, search radius, and a value of 40 miles. This will override the one that you have in your web config, which was 20 miles. The only thing that you need to be careful is that the name needs to be exactly the same, of course, or else you're just adding another one. Same thing goes for connection strings. So if you want to do this for connection strings, it's exactly the same thing. Now talking a little bit about scaling. I can do auto scaling with app services, and this is one of those features that a lot of people just stays like, wow, this is awesome when they see this, which is based on a rule. I can just say, hey, for example, if my CPU is higher, but the usage of my CPU is higher than 70%, I want to add a new instance to my app service. So basically you have one, it's getting higher and higher and higher, the CPU usage. Oh, okay, I need to kick in another instance, boom, and then you have another instance. So now you have two instances. And then of course you should do the opposite, which is if you don't have enough usage over there, you see, oh, I'm getting like 30% of usage, global usage of all the instances. Hey, that doesn't matter. So let's just remove one of the instances, okay? So I can just remove one of the instances. So let's just do a demo, okay? With this, let's just configure auto scaling, and let's just see how easy it is to do this. So going back to the Azure portal, this is our app service. Now seeing here, configurations, okay? So if you go to configuration, you can still see in here. So I have a bunch of things in here, okay? If I want to add a new setting, it's literally just this, add a new setting, okay? Like, for example, search radius, okay? Like 40 miles, okay? There you go. Okay, so there you go. We have in here, okay? We can click here to see it, okay? There you go. Adding a connection string, same thing, okay? New connection string, okay? What is the name of the connection? What is the value? And in here, for example, if it's SQL databases. So easy than this, I think it will be almost impossible. Now let's explain auto scaling. So I can click here where it says scale out in my app service. I can just come here and just say, hey, I want 2 instances, and I press save. So what happens with this is this here will be for basically for, well, this will be manual scaling, but I don't want this. So let's just return this to 1 and click here where it says enable auto scaling. So in here, I can just add saying here, okay, scale based on a metric and add a rule. If I add a rule on this, let's just this open. I just want to see like, oh, the CPU is higher than 70%. Yeah, that's what I want. So okay, let me just close this. Let me click add a rule again. Do I have internet? I have internet. Because if I didn't have internet, that was kind of a trouble because I was talking just to the screen. Okay, so now it just opened. So now here, okay, the average, I want the CPU percentage. And if I go here, down here, you see here, greater than 70% for the last 10 minutes. And if that is the case, this will fire. And because this will fire, it will increase the count of instances by 1. Exactly what I want. So let me just click add. There you go. And now, of course, I need to add a second rule, or at least I should add a second rule that will just do less than. Okay, and now, for example, 30% for that, and instead of increasing, I'm going to do what? I'm going to decrease the count by 1. Okay, and you just add this. And if I save this, ta-da, there you go. We have auto scaling, okay, fully configured in our Azure App Service. So now if I get a lot of requests in our fantastic page that we have in here, okay, basically the CPU of this will just skyrocket to like 80%, okay, and then boom, we're going to have another, okay, another instance on this. It's literally as easy as this. You can see the number, okay, of instances. It's that number that you see over there, okay. And this is the app service plan. This means it's a standard S1. That's the tier that you're paying for this, and there you go, 1. By the way, in terms of pricing, you don't pay to use this. Of course, you pay is the number of instances, and if you need more instances, you're going to pay more, but the feature, the auto scaling feature, it's a free feature. It's included in the service, okay? So now let's talk about Traffic Manager, okay? Basically, Traffic Manager helps improving the availability of critical applications because like we saw in the first design, so the idea now is to have another region with this. And for managing the traffic between one region and the other, which users are going to one region, which users are going to the other region, okay, yeah, I will need to basically to work it out a little bit that. So Traffic Manager will do that, okay? This will allow me also to perform service maintenance without downtimes. And this is like one of the things that I hate the most in certain websites, is that when you go to a website and you just say, oh, we're doing maintenance, so the website is not live. And I'm saying every time that I see this, I say, in which century this company lives, because you see, for example, the Microsoft website down because they're doing maintenance or they're installing a patch. Do you see the App Store down because of that? The Apple Store, the Google Play Store? You don't. They are always working. Okay, but they don't do they do maintenance a lot for sure, but they don't close because they need to do a maintenance. Okay, that's something that is kind of silly today, to the systems today to do. So with this, we can solve this. I can also combine on-prem with cloud, because one of the endpoints of this can be on-prem. And I can also use distributed traffic for large and complex deployments, which is exactly what I'm talking about here. There are endpoints that I can have on this: cloud services, app services slots, or public IP addresses. So if you have a public IP address that is from on-prem, okay, it works. For doing this, for configuring the traffic manager, I need first to create a traffic manager profile. When you create the traffic manager profile, you choose what is going to be the load balancing method that you're going to use for this. There are several. I'm just going to touch on 3 of them, which is geography, priority, and performance. Okay, so geography, you will decide that, oh, if a user is coming from the United States, for example, I'm going to send this to that specific app service that I have over there. If it goes from another country, it goes to another place. So things like this. Priority and performance, I have some slides with those. Okay, so how this works: I have a user, okay, and let me just turn my laser on. So I have here a user, and the user just queries contoso.com. So he goes to the DNS server, and the DNS server sends him, oh, you need to go to contoso web.trafficmanager.net. Okay, so I get to the traffic manager service. Then the traffic manager, based from where I am, based on the routing method that you choose, that could be priority, performance, geography, for example, will select the endpoint, okay, from one of those 3 that you have in here, and then it will just send you that information. And then, of course, the browser here will just connect, okay, to the specific endpoint. The traffic doesn't come through, okay, the traffic manager does not come through to the traffic manager, okay? Goes straight to the endpoint, okay? So talking about the priority routing method, this is a simple one. Hey, you have 3 endpoints and you say priority 1, 3, 2, that's it. So what happens is, this is working, all the requests are going to priority 1. What about if priority 1 is down for some reason? Okay, I'm down, it's not working anymore. So now, okay, everything goes straight to priority 2. And of course, if priority 2 gets down to, okay, everything goes to priority 3. And let's hope that priority 3 is not down, okay? Performance routing method. This is slightly different. Imagine that I have that user is in the US. So I have those Azure regions that you see over there, and I have my app deployed in all the 3. What's going to happen in here is that, well, if it comes from the US, well, this one here will be the one that has the lower latency for that user. So that's where it's going to redirect the requests. If someone comes from Brazil, there you go straight to Brazil. If it's somewhere that is in Europe, well, probably the latency to North Europe will be the lowest. So let's just do a demo on how can we configure the Azure Traffic Manager. So first of all, let me just create some more infrastructure in here. So I need to create another web app. And that other web app needs to be, for example, in the United States. So the first one I created in Europe, the next one I'm going to create in the US. So let's just call webinar US. Is this one available? It is. Again, same thing like I did before. And now let me create this in East US, for example. And in East US, I'm going to create here, okay, a new, okay, I'm going to create here basically a new app service plan. So let's just wait for this to finish. So now that this is finishing, let's just go to my project. And now I'm just changing the message here. Instead of saying Europe, this is going to say USA. Let's minimize this. So this is basically creating our app service in the United States. There you go, it's done. So this is our app service. So if we click browse, there you go. We don't have anything in here. If I refresh this one, I still have here saying Europe. So I want to put in here the web app. Of course, look, in the wild, in real life, this should be the same application with no differences, okay? But of course, here for us to see if you're seeing one or the other one, this is why I'm doing that change over there, okay? So right click, publish. I'm just going to say I want a new profile. So this is the same thing that I did before from the other example, but now I'm just publishing this, okay, to the United States app service. When this is being done, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to create another resource and I'm going to search for traffic manager. And there you go, traffic manager profile, exactly what I want. To create this, okay, I'll just say webinar demo. Let's see if this is available. It is. .trafficmanager.net. I'm just going to say the routing method will be geography because I want to demo this one. I'm going to say, yeah, webinar demo. It's where I want you to create all this. And basically this is being, okay, it's being created over there. There you go. Go to resource. Okay, so this is my traffic manager profile. Now, before we create the endpoints in our traffic manager profile, let's check the other website. So this is the USA website. There you go. See, it says here USA. So now let's create endpoints. So in here on the menu on the left, if you go to endpoints, it's just add another endpoint. It's an Azure endpoint. Yes. Let's just say Europe. Okay. So Europe. Endpoint. What target it is? Oh, it's an app service. Choose the app. It's this one here. Now that I choose this, I can do the regional grouping. And the regional grouping, okay, I can select here. For example, if I come from Europe, and for example, currently I'm in the fantastic country of Portugal. So let me select here Portugal. So if I'm coming from traffic from Portugal, I want to go to this, okay, Western Europe endpoint that I have. And I'm going to add another one, which is basically USA endpoint. Again, it's an app service. Choose this. I choose the other one. And in here, I'm going for, well, not South America, but North America. And I can choose the United States. And even because it's United States, I still even have, okay, the state. I'm not going to the detail of the state. I'm just going to press OK. So now this is being added. So you see the first one, it's already online, okay? The second one that we just added, it's just basically checking, okay, checking the endpoint, okay? So I have here a question that is, someone is saying that it seems really a bit problematic to have to publish this to separated regions. If there is not a replication, automatic web replication option on this, is currently, yeah, there is not. Usually what we do to do this is that in our continuous integration and continuous deployment pipeline, we basically deploy to the two places, and we deploy to one, then we deploy to the other one, so that we make sure that there is no downtime, okay, on the web application. So let me just refresh this. Probably this is already done. It's not. Okay. So let's just wait a second. when this is still doing this, I'm just going to copy here the DNS name, okay, of our traffic manager. So there you go. They are both online. So for me to test this now, it's pretty easy, okay? As you can see, I'm just going to put this, okay, in my browser. Again, you can put custom domains on this, okay? And there you go. Because I'm in Europe, I see the European version of this. And if I want to see, if I go here to virtual machines, I have my webinar demo VM. I created a virtual machine that this virtual machine, as you can see from here, okay, it's deployed in East US so that I can simulate traffic, okay, from, so basically I can simulate traffic from the United States. So let me just open this. I'm just doing an RDP session, okay, to that specific virtual machine. So there you go. It should be good. So let's just wait a second. There you go. So the only thing that I didn't create it was the virtual machine, because the virtual machine takes a while. So I previously, before the webinar, I created the virtual machine so that we can test this from several points in the world. And usually this machine is way faster than this. Come on. So there you go. So what I'm just going to use here Edge, okay? And I'm going to put the same URL that I did before. See, and we see USA. So it's fully working our solution. So traffic manager in the mix here, doing all the magic behind the scenes so that this be possible. So there you go. So this is done. Now let's talk about another service, okay, which is Azure CDN. And I know that there is a question here from John. John is saying, "Oh, the blob static is missing from the other region." So the thing is, it's not, because I'm going to only have the Azure blob in just one region. I don't need it in the other region, because then I'm going to shift, okay, all the files that I have there, all the static files, using the Azure CDN, because the idea is that blob was just for the Azure CDN. So the Azure CDN can serve content from Azure storage, from cloud services, from app services. It's a separated host name. And I will have several points of presence locations across the world. And my idea is, instead of just having my files and my static files, this can serve like videos, images, CSS files, JavaScript files, images. Then, for example, sometimes we just need the images in RDUI of our website. Okay, so all of this, that they are static, it's static content. Okay, it's public content, so we can just put it on our Azure CDN and serve it. Instead of the URL of our app, we can just use another URL, and using the Azure CDN, with this, these files will be much closer to the users than our Azure regions. Because, like, let's imagine I have one in the United States, I have another one in Europe, and I will select a third region, for example, in Asia Pacific. Of course, look, even in the US, if I choose East US, for example, if I have someone in Seattle, the latency will be a little bit big. I might not need to consider to have another region with this, but Azure CDN can help improve the speed of this kind of content. I have three big endpoints for this, three big networks, and I can do this when I create my CDN profile, which is Microsoft, Verizon, and Akamai. So Verizon and Akamai, they use their own servers, their own POP servers. Microsoft uses, of course, the Microsoft network for this. Okay. So creating an Azure CDN. So if you just search for CDN, okay, you should have here CDN, Microsoft, create. And now, okay, in my profile in here, okay, I'll just say webinar demo. I choose here my webinar demo resource group, and then the pricing tier, I select Microsoft, standard Microsoft. Just from in here, okay, I can create my CDN, okay, my CDN endpoint. So I will just choose webinar demo, and I'm going to say, hey, yeah, it's going to be a storage account. And oops, I need a storage account. So let me just let me not create this from here. Let me open another portal. Let me just create a storage, okay, a storage account, because we need a storage account for this. So same thing here, training demo. I'm going to call this, for example, webinar demo. Let's see if it's available or not. It is, great. And I'm going to choose West Europe. There you go. So when my storage account is creating, let me just go to my webinar demo. I should have here my CDN profile. There you go. Now I need to create an endpoint, but before I click here to create an endpoint, let's just wait for our storage account to be created. I just wanted to navigate there so that it's just faster now. Usually a storage account is really fast. See, okay, it's kind of done. What I'm going to do in my storage account, I'm going to create a blob container to put my files on it. So I'm just going to call this demo, and I'm just going to say, yeah, public access to this. Okay, there you go. This is my container. I'm just going to upload some files over here. Okay, and for example, I'm just going to upload here 2 logos. Okay, so there you go. So this is basically my MVP logo, for example. I can click in here, and if I open this in the browser, it doesn't matter. There you go. We can see the logo. So the logo is public, but it's publicly, but look, it's available through, this is my blob storage. So now I want to do this, make this available, but through the Azure CDN. Create here to add an endpoint. Okay, so webinar, I think it was webinar demo that I tried before. Yeah, it works. Origin type, storage account. Okay, and now I can select here webinar demo.blob.core.windows, which is exactly, okay, my my storage account. So it's creating this. Now this, okay, this can take up to 10 minutes in the Microsoft network to make your files available for the first time, because I just created, okay, the Azure CDN. If you're talking about Verizon or Akamai, they will have different times, okay? One of them, I don't remember by heart which one, can even take up to 90 minutes, 90, which is a lot, but again, it's just on the creation. After the creation, after the creation is done, it's done, we are good. So there you go. This is my host name. So now if I do this, and if I replace this in here, see, this is going to be the URL I'm going to do. So webinar demo, Azure Edge. So this is, I'm doing my CDN, and then demo MVP logo. Okay, so the same thing. And if I do this, okay, see, it's still not available. So let me just, sometimes it's just a little bit of time. Okay, so let's just close this. If it's not, well, we will come back, okay, later, but this can take up to 10 minutes, okay. Oops, there you go. No. There you go. See, sometimes it just takes a little bit of time. See, I'm using the Azure Edge domain, and there you go. Of course, this can also have custom domains. You can put a custom domain on this, and you should like cdn.mycompany.com, something, okay, something like this. Now talking a little bit about what? About the Azure Serverless platform. So what happens in here, I have functions. I can run logic apps, okay, and I can run event grids. All of this, they make part, okay, of what we call the Azure Serverless Platform components. All of this you can connect and interpret seamless with the Azure Platform components, like, for example, databases, Azure SQL, Cosmos, storage services, also security, identity, IoT, analytics, and even AI workload. Okay, all of this, I can just seamless integrate all this. And of course, because Microsoft always think very well about developers, all of this, they have basically all local development platforms to do this locally. So we don't need to be in the cloud to create an Azure function and things like that. Talking about Azure Functions. So Azure Functions is a serverless compute service. I will have code on demand. I don't need to provision any kind of infrastructure. And then, of course, look, I can just respond to events. So basically, it's a solution to run small pieces of code that without the need, okay, to write all the code for basically for how do I start my function? Oh yeah, because there is, for example, a new file on a blob storage account. So because you have that, yeah, I want to start my function. All that is a configuration. You don't write that code. Then the code that you write on your app can be C#, can be Node, Java, PHP, Bash, or PowerShell even. Okay, even those scripting languages. So basically, common scenarios will be trigger-based processing. Okay, it will be just, for example, every day, every hour, or because you have some kind of event. And there are a lot of services, okay, that support integration with Azure Functions, like Cosmos DB, like notification apps, storage. And the demo that I'm going to do is I'm going to have a queue. I'm going to have basically a message inside the queue, and that will trigger, okay, my Azure function from running. But I can even go to external stuff from Azure, like Twilio. If you get a response on a text message on Twilio, boom, your Azure function will run. In terms of billing, what we have on this is we have two big types of billing. You can go to consumption, which is a pure serverless workload. So it's just like Microsoft will scale. We don't need to think about instances. We don't need to configure scaling like I configured for the app service. Okay, so it just works, and you pay the bill in the end of the month, and that's it. Or I can go for app service plans. If I go to app service plan, that's a traditional app service model. So what I did for a web application, you need to have the same thing for the app service plan. So that instance is a standard or is a premium. You need to choose. You need to configure scaling. If you want to do auto scaling with all of that, you need to think about that. So in serverless, in consumption mode, you don't need, okay, you don't need to think about those details. So let's just create here, okay, an Azure function pretty quickly. So function app, I'll just create a function app, and I'll just say webinar demo. Let's see if this is available. And webinar demo 2. There we go. I'll just say using existing. I'm just going to say here webinar demo. See here, I choose the consumption plan. I'm going to West Europe, and I'm going to say, yeah, .NET will be my runtime stack. Over there is where you can choose if you want Python or if you want Java, Bash, PowerShell, etc. So now this is going to create my app service. Okay, so this is our last demo. And let's see if this. This is taking like forever now. Let's just wait a second to see if this finishes. Usually this is really, really, really fast to finish. Well, when that is running, let's just see here. Okay, so in the end, okay, basically what we have is something like this, that if you see, okay, so we did, okay, where's my mouse? There you go. So we basically created all this part in here, right? We created this in the secondary region. We created this and this with the CDN to connect to this. This is why, okay, I don't need to have this in the secondary region. I'm creating the function app, and I'm also going to create the queue with this, okay? So, and also we created the traffic manager that will shift, okay, to the two regions. And you see with some slides explaining what it was, but we do this in less than an hour. Then an hour we just created like everything, okay? Some scenarios that we have with this, it will be something like this, okay? That is, imagine that you have a purchase order generation. So I have a web app, people click on the web app, they do things, they put a message, okay, on the message queue. Because of this, this will trigger an Azure function. That function generates a purchase order in PDF, stores the file of the PDF in blob storage, and then boom, okay, I have another Azure function that uploads the file, for example, via FTP to a third-party logistics, okay? So this is the kind of stuff that I can do with this. And again, if you see this, the last bit that you have over there, so all of this here to the right, you need to think is the code, okay, the architecture, how you design this. I don't think about the infrastructure. I don't think about, oh, that queue over there needs to have 2 machines or 3 machines. We don't care about that. There is not that concept anymore. And that's the big, okay, that's a big advantage on all of this, okay? Great. There you go. So doing the demo on the Azure functions. So there you go. This is done. I just need to create a new function. I'm going to say it's from the portal. Okay, more templates. And now I'm just going to choose in here. So you see, you can have an HTTP trigger, a timer trigger. In my case, I'm going to select an Azure queue storage. This needs to install something in here. So basically, I'm going to have a queue in my Azure storage. So if we go here, this is my storage. So if we go to queues, oops, sorry, it's not this one. It's another storage account because I set to create this in another one. So webinar demo, I should have here this one that says webinar demo something. So if I go to queues, I'm going to create here a new queue. I need to know the name. The name will be showing here. So let's just wait a few seconds. And I know that it's just run over time. I'm sorry about that. But this is a little bit slower than what I was expecting. So this is the name of the queue, okay? And I'll just say create. So let me just create the queue in here with that name, okay? I click on the queue, and I'm just going to say add message. And I'm going to leave this here empty, okay? I'm going to the other tab. So this is my function, and I'm just going to run this function as it is. As you see in here by the code, it just logs here in the log, okay, in the log window, C# queue trigger function processed, and then is my queue item. So I'm now going here, I'm just going to add, okay, this, let's just say, how cool are Azure functions? Oops. Okay, and if I just press OK to send this to the queue, you're going to see in here, see how fast this was, okay? How cool are Azure functions? Okay, so this was like super, okay, super easy to create. And then of course, look, we could just do this in a very easy way. So this part, going back here to our diagram, okay, it's basically this last bit in here, okay? Oops, let me just put here the pen. So it's basically this last bit in here. Of course, I should have done the same thing for the other region. My app, of course, should have code to send messages to the queue, etc. But I think everyone understands, okay, that this is just a demo. So of course we don't have the time for this. I have basically a question here about Azure queues or Service Bus queues. Okay, of course, look, Service Bus, it's a professional messaging service. You can have so much more features on Service Bus. You have, like, for example, FIFO when using sessions, which is first in, first out ordering. You have other features like you guarantee that a message is only delivered once and only once, a thing that you don't have when you're talking about Azure storage queues. Okay, so in the world's wide scenario, well, probably you're going to need those features. But if you don't need those features, really wisely look at them, also performance-wise, etc., because you can save some Azure credits using Azure storage queues that are much cheaper than the Service Bus ones. And if it works for you, why should you pay a lot of money just because, hey, it's cooler to use Service Bus? Okay, it should be cooler, but we need to think about the customer in our budgets, etc. Okay, so just as some best practices for Azure Functions, avoid long-running functions. Okay, this is to run short functions. Even in consumption mode, by default, they cannot run more than 5 minutes. You can tweak that up to 10 minutes, but that's it. Okay. Write stateless functions. Okay, functions should be stateless and impotent. Okay, code defenses also assume that your function might need to continue from a previous fail point. So things like this. On these kinds of designs, other useful services will be Azure Cosmos. Okay, it's a NoSQL database experience, Azure Redis Cache, and Azure Search. So thank you very much. Okay, so my name is Tiago, and this is how you can build applications with app services and serverless. You still have all my contacts in here. Okay, so if you need to ping me, just do it. Okay, more than available to help everyone. Okay, thank you very much.